Good morning, afternoon, or evening. This is Adam Weintraub from Hawaiʻi County Civil Defense, and you are watching the Personal Preparedness Podcast, Civil Defense's attempt to communicate with the community about best practices to stay safe in a natural disaster. As we record this segment today, it's early March 2026, and it's almost a full 80 years since a crucial moment in modern Hawaii Island history of natural hazards, the April 1st, 1946 tsunami. It was the deadliest and most destructive tsunami to hit Hawaii in modern times, killing at least 159 people. It was also the catalyst that helped spur the creation of the Pacific-wide Tsunami Tracking Center and system that helps us keep our shores and people safer today. We all experienced the tsunami warning in July when we had hours of advance warning and successfully evacuated the coastal areas that could have been devastated by waves from a large earthquake off the coast of Kamchatka. But there are very few left who can tell the story of the April Fool's Day tsunami of 1946, which overran the coasts of Hilo and Lapahoehoe with wall after wall of water and struck without warning. In some ways, we owe our safety today to that tragic tsunami 80 years ago. So we're joined today by Cindy Preller, who is the executive director of the Pacific Tsunami Museum here in Hilo. The museum is home to records and recordings of oral history about tsunamis and their impact on Hawaii Island. Cindy, what should people who live here today know about the 1946 tsunami?
No one should ever forget that tsunami. Well, no one should forget any tsunami, but that one specifically is really what alerted the world that we need to have a warning system, that there should be something in place to let people know to get out of the way.
And I've done a little bit of research on the tsunami, mostly finding contemporaneous records. This was a tsunami that got its start in the Aleutian Islands and struck at about 4:30 in the morning,
right,
if I'm not mistaken, local time. The closest people who could have provided any warning of the tsunami, as I understand it, was a Coast Guard station on Unamak Island, and that station was effectively wiped out by the tsunami. So the first word that Hawaii had that a wave was coming was when a ship off the coast of Oahu spotted it on its way towards the islands the next morning. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the consequences were?
Oh, sure. I'd like to give you a little more history about
Please.
that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So the Scotch Cap Lighthouse in Alaska was a brand new lighthouse. It was 100 feet above sea level. It was concrete, reinforced concrete, and bright, shiny new, right? Just offshore of the lighthouse, there was a tugboat barge, and they felt the earthquake. And one of our interviews at the museum is this story, and his name is Eldon Gallier. And they felt the earthquake, which is weird in a ship. You normally wouldn't feel it. And he said the ship groaned and made all sorts of unusual circumstances and sounds in that great language of the 40s, you know. So then they felt the swells, which were over 80 feet tall, out in the open ocean, and they were pulling a barge, and the barge cable just zinged out. So it was pretty wild for them. What is mind-blowing to me is that the captain knew what it was. So the first thing they did after 3 large swells is try to signal the lighthouse, and there was no lighthouse signaling back. Then the captain figured out the travel time, which is also amazing to me. Tsunamis travel about 600-700 miles per hour, about the same speed as a jet. How he knew that, I don't know. But he pulled out the charts and he figured out the travel time, and he knew that Hawaii was going to get hit. So he could not radio Pearl Harbor. So he radioed Adak, Alaska, which is way out at the end of the Aleutian chain. But there was a very active naval base there. And so he did get the message to Adak. But what we don't know what happened after that. We were told that Pearl Harbor, they assumed Pearl Harbor was monitoring their radio. And then also we were told that the message was successfully given to Pearl Harbor, but nobody believed it because it was April Fool's Day.
But one way or another, the word never got to the Big Island. It never got to the North Shore of Maui. It never got to any of the places that felt the impact of those waves after they crossed the ocean.
That's correct. That's correct.
You raise an interesting point about his calculating the travel time.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental piece of our early warning system now, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
The location of the earthquake sort of starts a clock in motion where whether we know there's a tsunami or not, we know how much time we have to make sure that people are safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The earthquake is the zero time itself.
So you're okay. And you're speaking of the local tsunami generation, or are you talking about the earthquake marks zero on that scale?
The earthquake marks zero.
Got it.
Locally or not, the earthquake marks zero.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about local earthquakes later on. I do want to get into, now one of the things that the museum is known for are the oral histories that you collected with the dozens and dozens of survivors from the 1946 tsunami. What are some of the things that we can learn from their stories about how to survive a tsunami, how to stay safe?
Absolutely. They are precious. I mean, the stories are absolutely precious, and I don't even think we've begun to tap what we can learn from them. But the instrumentation doesn't usually survive the waves, so what people see, felt, heard, all those things is what has informed us on nature's warning signs. And so being able to translate those lessons into, what we can take to schools and kids and the public and all of our listeners now, we owe it to those stories. Plus, they're our cultural history, there are families, so there is just a ton. There's so much social science about how people handle disasters, all sorts of lessons we can learn about trauma. It just goes on and on.
Okay, and just in terms of physical evidence of the force of a tsunami and the way that it affects the landforms when it strikes from different directions and that sort of thing, your institution is a repository for a lot of the photographic record, and you've, I'm sure, seen some of the photos that have been placed up on the screen as we've been talking here. But the key element is from a safety perspective, which is, of course, how civil defense looks at it, is how much time do you have to clear those inundation zones? And what's the range of times for a distant tsunami? We talk about the earthquake is 0.0, but when 0.0 is in Alaska, that's very different than if 0.0 is in, say, Chile or off the coast of Japan, or as in last year's incident, off the coast of Russia.
Yeah.
What's the range of times we're talking about?
So Alaska, as far as a distant tsunami threat goes, is our closest. So it's 4 to 5 hours.
Okay.
And Japan is around 8 hours, and Chile is more like 16.
Okay, and Chile was the source of the 1960 earthquake. Right?
Yep, the largest earthquake ever measured.
Okay. And it's one where we learned some things about our warning system, which is that we needed to do a better education job about what the hazard is. 46 taught us that you need warning. What 60 taught us is that people have to understand that the initial impact of a tsunami is not necessarily the worst impact of a tsunami, because there was a series of waves, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And people saw the first one come in, and they said, cool, let's go check out the shoreline again. And they got caught by the follow-up waves.
That's right.
So it sounds like one of the lessons we can take from the data that's been collected over time is wait for the all clear to come. It's not safe to return just because you saw a wave.
That's correct. That's correct. And that all clear will be issued by your local emergency management. So that'll be issued by Hawaiʻi County Civil Defense in our case. But on Oahu, it would be City and County of Honolulu. So the warning center, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, may cancel the warning, but that is not an all clear.
Okay. And you mentioned Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. That was ultimately the outgrowth of what we learned from the 1946. was it the Seismic Wave Center that first became, that followed the 1946, and then eventually that became the Tsunami Warning Center?
Yes, yeah, the Honolulu Seismic Observatory.
Okay. So that brings us to local tsunamis, because USGS is our partner on most seismic events, and they monitor the volcanoes here and any kind of seismic activity in any of the state of Hawaii. Tsunami Warning Center can see these seismic events coming from across the ocean, but we also face a threat from locally generated earthquakes that can create a tsunami, whether through an underwater landslide. You talked a little bit about the value of getting natural warning signs. Tell us about the natural warning signs that people would have to be aware of if there was a local earthquake that caused a tsunami.
Thank you. It's so important. One of the reasons why it's so critical to know them is that the Warning Center does not have enough time to issue a warning for a local event. And what we've learned from the survivor stories is that the tsunami itself, if you are right next to the earthquake or the landslide, or both, that it can arrive in less than 2 minutes. And the Warning Center needs at least 3 to evaluate an earthquake. So, and they work in partnership with the USGS. So.
Well, and depending on where the earthquake originates,
Right.
that travel time can change. If it's on the south flank of Kilauea,
Correct.
Hilo might only have a couple of minutes, but Kona's got 7.
Right.
Oahu might have 20.
Right.
But that changes if it's a settling earthquake that causes a landslide off the Kona coast. So the natural signals, as I understand them, roaring sound, like a freight train. If you feel a very strong shake, like strong enough to knock you to your knees. If you see the water recede from the shore. And this is what caused so many deaths in Lapahoehoe in 1946, is that all of a sudden there was all this seabed that was visible, and the children wanted to check it out. So they ran out there, and then the water came back.
You're right. It recedes so quickly that it leaves the fish behind. And so Hilo Harbor, our bay, also drained dry as well.
Okay. So if any of those signs, the roaring sound, the receding water, the strong shake, if you experience them, don't wait for the sirens.
Correct.
Get to higher ground.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be very high. It's just 100 feet elevation can mean the difference between life and death for most tsunamis.
Yeah, I like to tell people to go as high as you can, you know, because locally, especially, a tsunami can be higher than 100 feet.
Absolutely. It depends greatly on the shape of the land that it's flooding onto.
Exactly. And the other important thing about nature's warning signs is you can't count on seeing or hearing all of those signs. So even just one of them is enough to go. And if it feels weird, it is weird, right? And there's other ones too, like if the ocean looks really frothy, like a root beer float or kind of a boar tide, that's not normal. That's not normal surf weather. Some people actually hear bubbles on the beach, you know, or a rattling sound, you know, but whatever, none of these are normal beach, ocean behaviors. And so, yeah, gotta go.
In that cases, don't fool around. Get to high ground.
Please.
Whether you drive, whether you walk, whether you climb a tree, which saved lives in 1946.
Absolutely.
It's a very serious threat. That's why we do Tsunami Awareness Month every year. It's because of the April 1st, 1946 tsunami that we observe Tsunami Awareness Month every April. What will the museum be doing in April to mark the occasion?
We've got a lot of things going on. We always have the first Saturday of the month is free for Kama'aina, and we have live music, and we have a lecture, and all sorts of great fun things. But we'll be doing that every Saturday throughout April. We are hosting a documentary that's being filmed by Lapahoehoe survivors. We will be attending the Lapahoehoe Memorial they have every year. And there's some more exciting things we just haven't scheduled yet. So Stay tuned. And let me know if you want to do something fun.
All right. Cindy, thank you for being with us today. For our April podcast, we'll be talking about specific steps that you can take and the lessons learned from the July tsunami evacuation. Until then, Thank you for being with us. I'm Adam Weintraub for Hawaiʻi County Civil Defense, and we will see you next month.
Aloha.
I got a few questions to ask you. This is going to go on the extended version
Sure.
of. So, has there been any has the island generated its own tsunami that affected? I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that.
I
as
sure
well.
can.
Yeah.
And I'm really,
a story or two or something like that.
you bet you know. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
75 was local, wasn't
Yes, yes. And 75 was 50 years ago. So we just commemorated the Halape local tsunami. And that happened in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And several living survivors came to those commemoration events. And so that was really moving. But our island has hosted, oh boy, at least a dozen that we know of local tsunamis.
And there is geological evidence that they go back before there were humans living here.
Right.
I mean, there's seashells that are planted on the mountains at 300 feet up and things like that where they wouldn't have been submerged before. But Halape, how many died in Halape? 6?
Yeah, and only 6,
Yeah.
right? Or only 3. I mean, I always steer clear of the actual numbers because there's missing, but it was Thanksgiving weekend and a lot of people were down there.
Yeah, camping. There
Yes.
was a Boy Scout camp on the beach, and I think at least a couple of the kids got away and some of the scoutmasters, but a couple were lost, never found.
Right.
The entire coastline subsided by like 12 feet. So there was a coconut grove on the edge of the beach, and it was completely submerged when the shaking was over with. So,
Boy Scout Troop 77 was there. They went every Thanksgiving. And there were also some local horsemen, fishermen that were there, and some folks from the Sierra Club. So it was actually a very busy spot that day.
So the reason why I asked that as well is you guys mentioned about going up to higher ground. So I was also, when we do hear of a tsunami threat or whatever, I don't know what the right term is, but
That works.
that is island wide, right? It's not just, okay, it's going to come from Kona. I mean, it's going to hit Hilo. Kona guys don't have to worry about it. What do you think about?
That is a great question, and that applies both locally and for the distant tsunamis, because people feel like, well, if the tsunami is coming from Japan, Kona's in trouble, but Hilo is not. But tsunamis wrap around islands, and so there is no safe shoreline when a tsunami is underway.
yeah, there's a whole field of geological study that has to do with calculating how the angle at which a wave hits the shoreline will translate into wraparound effects. Because of the way that Hilo Bay is situated, it's particularly susceptible to generating forces up in the Alaska area, but there's other parts of the island where, depending on where it comes from, but it's much wider than a straight line impact. It has to do with the way that the wave breaks as it comes to the shallow water and then is affected by the curve of the shoreline, and it follows the edges of the land.
Awesome. And final question. If somebody wanted to, let's say their grandpa, you guys hold all these footage of, recordings and or transcripts of what happened that day, how would they go about acquiring if they know like the grandpa was in it? Like, you know at that age?
If we already have the oral
Correct.
history,
Is it like cataloged somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, we have an extensive archive that is actually going through restructuring and updating.
Okay.
But once it's ready and done, hopefully our vision is to just have a kiosk in the museum and people can come and search for their family stories. But until then, all they need to do is send us a request and we can search for them. Awesome. Yeah, and Adam, I wanted to let you know there was a naval plane off Oahu that saw the tsunami as well.
Okay.
And the tsunami was going faster than the plane. Okay. Yeah, it was from Kaneohe.
The version that I had read was that the first attempt to radio locally came from a ship that had just cleared the corner of the island coming out of Pearl Harbor. And they were north of Oahu. There may have been a plane as well, but the first person that this account said, gave radio notification was a naval captain.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's true. And I also was told that the police were radioed at Hilo an hour before arrival, but I haven't seen that verified. And that's not enough time to evacuate everybody anyway.
No, we generally try, our protocols are to make sure the zone is empty
Right.
30 minutes ahead of anticipated arrival.
And you guys did a fantastic job in July.
That's all on HPD mostly,
They
and
did
Public
great.
Works.
They did great.
We helped them build the plan, and they were the ones who executed it. So we had a couple of little spots where we made some adjustments for our planning. The plan didn't specifically state that a certain road out of Kalakaua had to be 2 lanes both outbound and nobody inbound. So they were still letting residents back in at first, and then they realized that it was causing problems back inside the neighborhood, so they corrected it on their own without any kind of feedback.
That's awesome. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
That's how we get better.
Yeah, that's we're actually in the process of finalizing an after-action review.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's going to go back to all the agencies that were involved, and everybody. They pulled up chairs at Auntie Sally's, and you were there.
I was there.
I think I was sitting next to you.
Yep,
As a matter of fact.
absolutely.
Okay.
Let me know if I can help.
Appreciate it, and I'm sure you'll get a copy once it's ready for prime time.